Hello and welcome back to our How to Paint tutorial series of videos. Today we're going to be going kind of back to our roots. We originally started out with the Dark Angels. If you've seen my first couple of videos, we did a how-to on that. And we're going to be going back to Dark Angels. We're not going to be doing the same color scheme this time. We'll be going with the Deathwing, kind of more white, off-white kind of colors. So if you've already seen the first videos, don't be afraid to watch this one thinking that it's going to be the exact same. It's going to be a little different. We will be using a couple of the same colors in the end, so it's not too extreme. But we're going to go ahead and jump right in here. Now normally, if you've seen my other videos, you know that I kind of pre-apply a nice layer of this Vallejo surface primer. But I was kind of thinking about it, and I'll try not to peak my mic too much there with opening these paint containers. But thinking about it, I haven't really showcased how to go about applying this primer yet, and I feel like doing a beginner-friendly tutorial, we're not really doing it justice if we're not walking through every step at least once at some point, right? So we're going to go ahead, get our trusty paintbrush. Again, we're using nothing fancy. If you've seen the other videos, you know this is all reliable. It's not a very well put together brush at this point in time. I've been using it for several months, but it's worked wonders so far, and it will continue to serve me valiantly. And that's about all I can ask from a brush, right? Now these are very cheap brushes. I'm not using anything too fancy. I prefer not to use expensive brushes just in general, but I also kind of want to showcase that you don't have to have the best and brightest equipment to get solid paint jobs. You can get along just fine with the tools at your disposal. You can find these pretty cheap brushes almost everywhere, really. Your dollar store, I'm sure, has them. Amazon, Walmart. If you want to go the even cheaper route, you can go like AlexaPress or Temu. I've seen quite a few on there. It's not something that's expensive to buy, so you can find it on the cheapest of sites and not really worry about quality. And that's kind of the nice thing about Temu. I know they have a lot of questionable business practices, and I'm not here to debate ethics, but I do kind of buy a lot of Warhammer themed stuff off of there, and you'd kind of be surprised at the quality of it. I just recently bought, I use a backpack for work, and I kind of covered it in different pins for different video games and whatnot. I have a Inquisitor pin that I got off Temu. I also have kind of like a Space Marine-esque looking badge. It's like a bronze Space Marine bust. It's very nice quality. It only cost me like maybe $3-4, so kind of a steal. And most recently, I actually bought a oath paper kind of seal, and that was also very cheap and was surprisingly good quality. So I'm not here to shill out or advertise Temu or AlexaPress or anything, but I know a lot of people have kind of reservations about buying from them, kind of because the quality is kind of assured to be lower, right, with kind of the prices they have. And I will tell you, if you're going on there looking for something expensive and you're expecting something good quality, I wouldn't recommend that. I don't have any experience with buying the more expensive things, but it just seems like a bad idea. But if you want something cheap and you're fine if it is made cheap, go and check it out. It's kind of very clickbaity. I don't like the app too much. It's very much in your face, trying to give you deals, and it's actually not deals, so be aware of that. But just use it kind of like you would AlexaPress, or I'm not sure what any of the other ones are. I know there's a couple, but use it like you would those, and you can get some pretty good deals on there. So enough of me kind of showing my more corporate side here. We'll step away from the sponsorship talks. All right, I'm not sponsored by Temu. I'm actually not sponsored by anyone, but hey, if you guys want to give me free stuff and you'll pay me to talk about it, I'm always open. right? Just kidding, slightly. I wouldn't endorse a product unless I liked it. It's kind of an ethics thing for me. Good Lord, I can't talk today. But, if someone came along and say Citadel, right, Games Workshop was like, hey, we'll pay you to advertise their paints. Well, heck, I'm only using Citadel paints anyway, so sign me up, right? I love your guys' stuff. But I don't think that'll ever be the case. I don't think they do sponsorships anyway. So, we'll keep our fingers crossed and hope for the best. Maybe someday they'll see me as the Bob Ross of Warhammer tutorials. But for now, we're gonna keep going and trucking along with our little guy here. Now, I failed to mention it before, and I probably should have said something much sooner, but you might have noticed that this is not an official model. And I'm sorry, Games Workshop. Please forgive me, for I have sinned. I have done the 3D printing, and I know Citadel kind of doesn't take too kindly to that. And I can understand why. It does kind of affect their baseline, But at the same time, it's got to be said, the Games Workshop prices, it's a great quality product. I will never complain about Warhammer quality, except for Finecast. But their models are top of the line. In terms of tabletop, I think they are probably the best. But they're really expensive. And if you look at 3D printing and you look at the price comparison, I printed this guy for maybe a dollar at the most, and that's including the electricity to run the printer. It's super cheap. So that's what I did. And this is a nice 3D model. I got it from, I think Ghamak is how you pronounce that. If you're familiar with 3D printing, it's on the My Mini Factory website. He has a tribes page, which is kind of like a monthly subscription kind of deal. I'm not subscribed to it. I just bought this model because I liked it, and again, I'm not trying to shill out too much in this episode. It happens that way. I can highly recommend it. I think it came out pretty well. So thumbs up for me, honestly. I think it's great. And we're going to get into our wacky angles here. And you'll forgive me, I'm not using my paint model holder, I guess is the name for it, which you've probably seen in my other videos. And that's because this entire model needs to be primed. Normally you wouldn't really deal with priming the rim of your bases, so you could slap it on your paint handle and not worry about it. But seeing how this is 3D printed, we kind of have to paint all of it. So we want a nice kind of even layer on all of the model that we can really see and all that we can reach. And I think, as I say it, I'm finding more spots, so I think this about does it. Now again, I'm sure I've missed some spots. That's just kind of the nature of the beast here. If you do pre-assemblies, you'll find that it's much easier to kind of reach everywhere. But we're not doing that. I'm not a fan of doing that, so we're just going to kind of work with what we have. And here's a little tip that the guys at Games Workshop himself don't want you to know. They want you to get your whole model, right? They want you to use up all of your Citadel paint so you can buy more. But if you can't see an area on the model too well and you can't reach it with your brush, odds are that when your product is fully finished here, we're just going to kind of clean up our palette a little bit. I got way too much primer on there for what we're doing. But the odds are if you can't reach it with your brush, you won't be able to see it, especially when it's on the tabletop. So don't worry too much about it. Now that our model is primed, we can actually grab our paint handle, if I can find where I put it. Here it is. And this is kind of a bigger boy. I'm not sure the exact size of the base. I think it's 32 millimeters for this one specifically. We're just going to slap him on there. He's a very snug fit. We're going to be moving on to our first base layer, which we're going to be using Xandri dust. Now here's a bit of a spoiler for you guys. I don't paint the Deathwing. I've never painted them, so I'm not sure how this is going to turn out. We're kind of winging it here, but I've found a recipe online that I liked. Someone else had recommended it on Reddit, so we're going to give that a bit of a try. And if it's terrible, that's okay. We'll kind of roll with the punches, and we'll make adjustments where we need to. But for our first layer, we're going to just kind of go with a little bit of a leap of faith here. Start just doing, again, a nice liberal application. And as always, I'm sure if you've watched this series before, you know that I talk about it very vehemently. We're going to have a little bit of water mixed in with our paint just to make sure we have some nice thin layers. Your layers can always be thinner. They, however, should not always be thicker, if that makes sense. It's kind of like being in warm weather versus cold weather, right? You can always add more layers, but you can't always take layers off. So that's kind of the comparison I like to make. And you'll see that as we do this, if this is your first time watching, our first layer here is really patchy. And that's kind of the look we want. That's how you know that your paint is thin enough, right? If it's going on solidly in the first layer, you probably have too much paint on your brush, or your paint is too thick. It's kind of a mix of both. So you want to be careful to avoid that. And we will actually, I want to showcase it a little bit again for all you beginners. If your paint is coming out and it kind of has bubbles on it, you might have a little bit too much water mixed in or not enough paint mixed in. So that's a good indicator. You just want to get a little bit more paint on your brush, kind of mix it around in your palette here. My palette is also very rundown, very old, but it has served me faithfully, so we will continue to use it. Alright, it's the, oops, if I could keep my model on the base here, my apologies. It is the dreadnought kind of logic, right? Only in death does duty end. And I kind of appreciate that about my tools here. The fact that they have lasted me months after months is kind of not only a kind of sign that you're taking care of your tools, besides this brush, obviously, it's been to the ringer, but also that your tools are kind of quality enough to really last you that amount of time. And again, we just want to reach kind of everything we can. A nice liberal application. And get this other leg. Now the problem with his cloak is that not only is it going to be hard to reach the underside of it, but it also kind of makes it difficult to see under there, which works for us and against us in a couple of different ways. The fact that you can't see under there is great, because if you miss anything, it shouldn't be too big of a deal. But also, if you do miss something, and you aren't able to see it now, at some point you might pick up your model and then see it once you're finished and you've done all your layers and maybe you've applied a kind of varnish, and then you see the spot you missed, and that'll kind of throw a wrench in your plans, right? So we want to be careful enough to kind of go in blindly, and if you can't see what you're painting, that's fine. It doesn't need to look good. We're just going to see if we can get our brush underneath and inside of that halberd, I guess is what it's specifically called. And as the rest of our model dries here, try to keep this in view. I apologize. Again, my workspace is all kinds of wacky, so I'm doing the best I can with what I've got, but it's kind of hard to keep my guy in focus at times. I get kind of that tunnel vision when I'm painting, and I don't pay attention to the camera view itself. And I apologize again for the kind of wacky angles we're going with here. It's equally as weird for you to see me flip it, 360 degrees as it is for me to do it. So we're just, rolling with the punches here. And I'm sure you can see it's very hard to reach, but kind of underneath the shoulders there is a very easy spot to miss. I'm going to make sure we get in. And again on the other side. Now again, I should have mentioned it sooner, but this will be a proxy for your Deathwing Knights, I think they're called. I'm a Ultramarines collector, so I'm not too familiar with the terminology of all the Dark Angels models. I really like the models. I really love the lore. I've just finished the second book in the Horus Heresy series. I think it was Fallen Angels. That talks about Dark Angels specifically. Great book. Not as good as the first one. I kind of like when it focused on Zariel, kind of more in a first-person kind of deal. But the second book was great in its own regard. I don't have any complaints about it, besides the ending. I'm not going to spoil it, but for the sake of the story, it's a good plot twist. But for the sake of rooting for the good guys, it's very aggravating, just knowing what's going to happen. And I feel like that goes for a lot of the Horus Heresy series, and I'm so sorry I bumped the camera. I promise I'll try to avoid doing that as much as I can. But, it's like watching Star Wars after seeing, episode 4, 5, and 6, and then going back and watching episodes 1, 2, and 3 afterwards. That's kind of how they came out in theaters, so that's how a lot of people saw it. You know what's going to happen. And you know that all three of the, episodes 1, 2, and 3 are just a build-up to that point. So it's kind of aggravating as you watch, like, the good guys, fumble around in the dark and kind of blindly follow their leads, and, the plot twists that are plot twists, but they don't. It's like that. That's how I view the Horus Heresy, and it's a good thing. I think it's great. But at the same time, I to live at the time when the first books kind of came out, and not knowing the end, and generally how the heresy itself is going to go, man, I would pay quite a bit of money for that experience to go into the Horus Heresy series blindly. But we can't do that. Technology isn't quite there these days, so we'll just enjoy what we have. And what we have is a great series of books. Actually, I'm sure you can see, I'm sure someone's already in the comments yelling at me about it, we missed the bottom of that foot there. And we're just kind of blindly, again, going underneath with our mangled brush here and getting as much coverage as we can. And we're covering this whole model, but the Talbird specifically will be going back over with a green, so don't worry about kind of getting full coverage on it. I just am, because I want kind of things to be more uniform here when we're finished. And given that I've never really done this paint scheme before, I'm not sure how the green is going to react with the Xandri dust specifically. So it might give us a cool effect when we're done. I don't know. We'll find out, right? And I actually want to kind of keep these episodes a little bit more on the shorter side. I'm not going to say that I'm doing filler content, but at the same time, I'm kind of doing filler content. We are going to be putting the same amount of effort that we do into our other videos into this, but at the same time, I'm just kind of painting this guy while I'm waiting for some more supplies to come in to do my other projects with. So we're going to be taking a little bit more of a longer time with this, which, gives us more of a kind of tutorial-esque feeling, right? Because we'll be kind of going in depth and explaining everything as we go. So pros and cons to both. But I definitely do apologize if you guys are watching the fantasy series right now and you're watching my Chaos Lord, Sorcerer Lord videos. I am taking a little break between that because I'm waiting on basing supplies. So I promise as soon as they come in, as soon as I actually order them, I'm kind of waiting on a paycheck first for that. I promise we will get back to it, and we will be finishing up that series. So hopefully it's not too long of a wait. Either way, if you've made it this far, and I want to apologize for my rambling, I'd like to say thank you for watching. If you guys like this and you want to see more of this, or even if you want to check out the gaming channel side of this, I also have a playlist where I'm currently playing 7 Days to Die. So if you like gaming, hey, maybe check that out instead. Either way, thank you guys very much for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe if you are so inclined. Again, you're not forced to. I'm not too hung up about it. If you don't, it's okay. I understand. Okay, we'll come to that agreement. If you don't want to, perfectly fine. I pass no judgment upon you. Either way, thank you guys very much for watching, and as always, I will see you in the next video.